Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Paula's Run Club with me, Paula Radcliffe.
And me, Christopher Thompson. Bit windy.
And we are doing this, in a bit of a windy, thankful for the breeze we are today,
Yes.
because it is one of the hottest days of the year so far. So we are taking advantage of Tomo's hospitality in his back garden. I can inform any listeners from previous episodes, the ice bath is still in the box.
Oh,
and I've
you're going to
seen
bring
it
that
in the
up.
box. So the dare has been laid down for this series, and Tomo will get in the ice bath at some point.
I want to get into it now. When it's the winter, it's less appealing. But yes, I will get it out. Don't worry. It's going to happen.
So this episode, we've decided it's going to be called A Family Affair.
Yeah.
And it really is about talking about getting your kids involved into physical activity,
Yeah.
primarily running, because that's what we do and that's what we love.
Yeah.
You're one end of the spectrum. I'm the other end of the spectrum. I've got teenagers, 18 and 14, and you, of course, have got a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. So you've got a little bit of time for the 4-month-old. But a lot of parents will be looking at the summer holidays and thinking, what can I do to keep my kids active, off screens, outside in the fresh air, especially on hot days like this, staying hydrated too, but laying down that foundation for a healthy lifestyle moving forward, and running is a brilliant way to do that. So to that end, we are very lucky to welcome onto the podcast this week Geoff and Susan Whiteman, formerly Susan 2B. A lot of athletics fans will know those names in their own rights. Geoff, 2:13 for the marathon, went to the Commonwealth Games, and Susan, one half of Susan and Angela 2B, went to Olympic Games, World Championships and Commonwealths, extremely successful, and parents, of course,
And
to Jake Whiteman.
2:31 marathon PB, wasn't it?
2:31 marathon
Yes.
PB for Susan, indeed. And many athletics fans will also, of course, know Geoff from his voice commentating and as a stadium announcer, notably London 2012 and 2017. He was the voice that you were hearing guide you, and we will play the clip later on because I love it. The clip of him commentating on his son winning in the World Championship Stadium in Eugene in 2022, beating Jacob Ingebrigtsen and
Yep.
taking the 1500 metre title. With your kids, what are your ideas at the moment in terms of getting them active?
Apologies for the noise and background.
Yeah.
We've got a few birds and a bit of wind, but it's pleasurable for us anyway. Yeah, I mean, running has been a big part, or sport's been a big part of my life, and now I've got kids. Like, you see it from a different angle. I'm very mindful of. I don't want to, Theo, who is 4 and being active, me just hovering over him and commenting on what he's doing, and we're doing it together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much the point at the moment. I just want him to enjoy being physically active, be outside, experience different things, almost do skills that he doesn't realise he's doing, because he's just moving,
Yeah.
and he's just like learning to ride a bike. He's learning to be on a scooter. He actually did his first jump on a scooter the other day, and he thought he was like, I want to say a scootering champion, I don't know, but he thought he was like what's that skateboarding guy, Hawk, is it Hawk
Yeah,
or someone?
Tony Hawk,
that's it. He thought he was Tony Hawk for a split second. But so it's all very kind of like we said, laying down foundations and those good relationships with sport, that actually it becomes a family kind of DNA of just having fun with it, and you can be competitive without it being a burden, I think.
No, and it can be fun, and it can be a stress release and a decompress when kids are going through exams. And I think it can go the other way as well. It doesn't have to be the parents encouraging the kids. I mean, I think back to when I was growing up, and my dad was a keen runner, and then when I joined the athletics club, and then my brother joined, and then my mum was like, well, I'm basically the taxi, and I'm sitting outside the athletics club, so I'm going to start running as well. And then the family became involved in that way, and it can be in different ways. And I think the key that I'm sure Geoff and Susan will talk about as well, and you've just mentioned there, is just letting the kids find their own sport and kind of going with the flow there, because you don't know which one is going to bite you and grab you and make you want to do that one a little bit more. And that's why it's really key just to get kids out there trying as many as possible,
and let the kids see you doing it as well. Because I mean, Theo saw a little bit of me racing as you get older. It's time will tell whether he'll physically remember it, not just through videos. But I think you see, I mean, you had it with Isla, you holding Isla at the end of the New York Marathon after you won. Does she have memories of those moments at all, or is she too young for that?
She doesn't really. She does because it's been talked about. But the funny moment, and why I'm laughing, is because we have that picture up at home, because I love it.
Yeah.
And when she was little, and she didn't used to like me going out for the evening run, so she used to start crying and things as soon as I'd gone out of the door, and Gary used to say, keep going, she'll be fine, and she stops 5 minutes afterwards. And then later on he said to me, he used to say to her, you see that picture, that's your mum holding you up saying, did anyone want to buy this kid because you wouldn't stop crying? So then she went from there to actually coming to watch me while I was running. So that was a way of getting her involved. But yeah, I'm not sure that's a parent motivation that should really come in.
But it does. I think like Theo at the moment is a sponge, and he wants to. I hear a lot about just enabling kids at that age to help you on chores, whatever it is, household chores or whatever. So if you are running or you're being active, they're just going to want to mimic and copy you. And
you're still in that easy phase. When you get to teenagers, they don't want to mimic and copy you. You've kind of got to throw it the other way at teenagers. I'm still in there. I don't want to go for a run. I'm too lazy to go for a run. You should go and do that.
Hey, but Raf's doing all right, though.
Yeah, no, he is.
Shout out to him, because he's doing really well.
It's when you do get to that point where you're no longer someone that they look up to and try and model. And we were watching the Kipyegon breaking 4 attempt, and he did say to her, Mum, have you run as fast as she has for that? Have you not got close to a 4-minute mile? I'm like, no, I'm a little way away. But Dad did.
But that's, I think there's an undertone there that I quite like. I think that's where family can almost normalise special achievements in a it's not in a horrible way, but at the end of the day, for me growing up, I was a runner that when I was growing up and go to GB champs, but when I came home I was just a son or brother, and it became I was just another person, part of the family. And so the achievements are great, but almost just making yourself just remind that for 22 hours of a day when you're not running, just be part of family and games. And that was something I mentioned to Geoff about board games. We as a family loved board games because we could be competitive in a safe environment, and I think that's where sport for me was always trying to make a safe environment that you can do well and not do well, and it does not matter, because when you get back, we're just another human being, part of a family having fun.
And the other point is it's an environment that teaches you to push yourself and to know your body, and to kind of have some gauge of what you're capable of on a given day, and modify it accordingly. So on days like today, when it is as warm as it is, to modify that pace and to kind of learn from that. And I think kids sometimes need a little bit of support from parents and wiser people in that respect, in terms of just making sure they stay hydrated enough through the summer, maybe pick cooler times of the day to go running, but they also handle it much, much better.
It strikes me, just to wrap up this before we get into the Geoff, there was someone reminded me of a really nice quote from George Gandy, Loughborough coach and just legend of the running world, coach to Seb Loughborough, Seb Co, and a lot of others. And he said how, and I think this applies to everyone, no matter where you are in a physical ability, of how running can change your life in 6 weeks. And what he meant, he was referring to athletes being injured, and you can feel like you're in a bit of a hole, but in 6 weeks' time, suddenly you could be, that all can be behind you, and you actually turn it around and win a major medal, because quite often 6 weeks out things do go wrong. And I thought that's a really good quote for anyone who's never even run before. If you even take that first step in 6 weeks' time, you never know where you might end up in a place where that's the power of sport. It only takes 6 weeks to completely change your life in a way that you can't even begin to imagine. And it obviously there's more to come beyond that, and you keep the momentum going. But I think that's the beautiful side of sport and running, and especially with kids, and that kind of that desire to integrate it into your family life and every day, even through the summer. That 6 weeks is a summer holiday. There's a lot you can do in that time, and you could create habits and change someone's life forever in a very short space of time through running. And
lay down those learnings as well. And it's funny, I was having a conversation, because both of my kids have just gone through exams, and supporting them through that. And my son, for the first time, thankfully in his life, decided to wake up and do a little bit of revision. So he came home from the first exam and he said, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It was much easier than the last one. And I said, well, that's when you go and do some preparation. When you've prepared for something, it's easy. It's always easy when when you know the answer. But it's also easier in running when you've done a little bit of preparation. So if you do a little bit of the core techniques that we worked around before, the stretching before and after, and really look after your body with that hydration and fueling as well, then it helps to make it more enjoyable while you're doing it.
There you go.
So should we crack on with Geoff and Sue? We are honoured to be joined by Mr. and Mrs. Whiteman, also known as Geoff Whiteman, commentator extraordinaire and stadium announcer and dad to Jake Whiteman, and most famously, and we will play a clip of it later on, did commentate on Jake's victory in Eugene in the World Championships in 2022. And his wife Susan, also known as Susan Tooby, one of the famous Tooby twins when I was growing up, a huge big inspiration, and both parents to Jake, of course.
Yes, excited to have you here, and thanks for coming all this way to sunny Hook.
It's a pleasure.
Hottest day of the year.
yeah. We picked a doozy, didn't we? But yeah, so.
I think we're titling this one The Family Affair, and we want to really work on the fact that over the summer holidays a lot of families are trying to get kids involved in sport, keep them involved in sport, might face similar challenges to the ones that you faced, that we faced as well, where not all of your children are as into a sport as some of them are, and trying to balance that, and also trying to balance the one that has exceptional talent and manage that through in a way that doesn't put stresses on the family. And I think you're probably unique in that Geoff, you were also coaching Jake for that success in Eugene and a big proportion of his career. So being able to balance that with, of course, Sam, who's his twin, and younger sister Martha. How did you manage that?
Well, his first coach was Susan, and I would say that for all three of our kids, one of the unusual features was they did everything. So, you know, they're not really built for it, but they played rugby, they played tennis, they played basketball, netball in Martha's case, and they did right through to their mid-teens, every sport at house games level. And also when they did start athletics by choice, they had a personal best for every discipline. So hurdles, long jump, triple jump, some of the throws as well. And I think that's quite important, that kids kind of find a way through activities. So there are other things in there. Jake played the violin for a while, didn't he? No, he didn't. He was trumpet.
He played the cornet.
Cornet, yeah.
Badly.
So they did all of those things.
That's good to say that. Maybe we should just put his javelin PB out there just to make sure that everybody feels like...
The one thing you can say for sure is it will have been almost the same as Sam's, and they will have kept going until somebody got the edge. But you were teaching them at that point, weren't you?
Yes, so during their primary school years, they were very, very fortunate, and they had a very enthusiastic games teacher at the local primary school. So they were very, very into their hockey and their running. And I used to go over and help with the hockey sessions. But the running, she just used to be superb. Mrs. Edwards, her name was. And it wasn't the fact it was just Jake and Sam, it was the fact that the kids were so enthusiastic about running cross country. They only ran around this local field, the school field, but they won everything. And I think in a way, if there was ever some inspiration for Jake, I think it probably came from there.
Yeah, I think that's so important for so many kids, isn't it? Just having fun and having a teacher. It doesn't even have to be in sport. It's a teacher in a subject that you like and that makes that subject come alive for you. And if that subject is sport, then that's a great start to get you into it. How did you manage to switch off, though, when you come home? So later on... You didn't.
Well, I was just thinking about the summer holidays. You said what we used to do with them in the summer holidays. And our garden wasn't huge. It was smaller than this area. But we used to have obstacle courses, and they were so competitive. Well, Jake and Sam were naturally competitive, but of course Martha, being younger than them, actually became as if not more competitive. And they used to have the kids, their friends round the corner, so they all used to compete on this obstacle course. So there was never a time when they were sat inside, dare I say, watching the television or on the game, can't even remember what you call it, console.
Yeah.
Changed a bit now. Yeah. So they were always very outdoor kids and very active, which I think is a blessing, really.
Which is it's really strong.
So was it you guys kind of sort of laying? I mean, obviously you weren't pushing, but just laying the opportunity to just be physical and stuff, and just kind of be imaginative with the games, like you say, obstacle courses. Because I'm going through it with my son at the moment. I'm like thinking of golf, and I just get him to swing just see if you can connect. It's
You're
nothing.
overthinking it.
No. I don't. No, just in terms of like just being physical and just being creative from a, you're not trying. It's not golf per se or anything like that. You're just simple throwing, catching,
Yeah.
or
Basic.
the obstacle course is perfect because it's all these different types of skills. So you're just almost putting something in front of them just to have fun with it.
Yeah.
I guess.
And it's also seeing the role models there. I
Yeah.
mean, presumably, we didn't clarify, but Geoff, of course, has run for the marathon to...
Yeah, so I've run 2:13 and Susan's run 2:31. She went to the Olympics. I didn't. So when Jake eventually made the Olympics, it wasn't a particularly big deal because his mother and his aunt had
That's what
both
he
been
said.
there. So it was like, you know.
So,
Yeah.
but were you running competitively that he can remember? Or
No.
Yeah.
So I retired 1990, around that time. So I was running. I was still running, and I
yeah.
was still training.
So
but I
presumably
wasn't
that was a
competitive.
regular in their day, growing up as well, seeing you go out for a run.
Yes, exactly.
And so seeing that kind of role model there.
Yes.
And was there a time when you were obviously beating him clearly to begin with, and then you have to let them win for a
Oh,
bit,
yeah,
and then
I'd
you
always
can't
beat
keep
him.
up with them
Yeah.
anymore. I'm going through that
That's
stage.
very-
Did you say let them win?
Very
I can't
good.
believe
We
you
don't
said
do that.
I
We're
did.
too competitive in our family.
I
to
was
let
doing a
anybody
hill
win.
session with Ralph the other week, and he said, turned around, and he said to me, "Mum, you don't have to let me win anymore." And I said, "I'm not now.
No.
I'm really trying to beat you now."
Were they aware of your success though, or did they? Because I
No.
know a lot of times, like, people say that kids aren't even aware of the parents'
Yeah.
success and stuff like that, so they just see you going out the door. But were they at all aware of being an Olympian and all that stuff? Or?
Vaguely, and I don't think it's anything that I would have shouted out to them and
No.
said, "Oh well, one day you could also go to the Olympics," and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. No, I just think in a way, as a PE teacher, I was always keen to get them outdoors, moving, doing something, and it wasn't difficult at all. And I suppose one of the advantages with the twins is that, and I being an identical twin myself, you've always got somebody to compete against, so and to play against. So it really wasn't difficult. I think it probably was about 5 years on the trot. I used to teach at a school, and I used to hire out the tennis courts, and I used to do mini tennis. And the year groups used to go out every year because our youngest Martha, if she was 7, it would be 7 to 11, so it would include them. So the next year it would be 8 to 12, and they would be part of it. So there was never a time in their summer holidays, especially, when they weren't doing something, or they were on a football camp.
Yeah.
But they didn't ever, and I don't know if that's a sign of the times. There weren't a lot of athletics camps around then.
No.
So
No.
actually, I don't think they didn't really do any organised athletics.
So when did the
before
club thing come into play? When did the joining a club? Who kind of initiated that?
Because
or
there's
how-
the
Scotland.
early videos, aren't there? I love those early videos of Jake running around when you're cheering him on in the cross country.
Yeah.
Yes, but they were school level when they were at primary
Right.
school. We had this very, well, it was sad and it was funny. So Jake had played football, and he got a laceration on the side of his eye, very close to his eye. Somebody had lifted his foot, had metal studs. And the PE teacher had said, "Susan, don't want to alarm you, but Jake's in hospital." So I'm going, right, Jake's in hospital. That's never going to alarm you, really, is it?
No,
So I'm like, "Right."
Always lead with that.
Yeah. So the day after was the district cross country, the schools, and all he could think about, and he had to have a local anaesthetic, was would he still be able to run? I said, "I don't think so, Jake." And he said, "No, will I be able to?" And the one thing he didn't want was his brother to win the title. And of course that happened. And it was the one day that
We've got it on
Sam,
video. He's so ungracious.
He's so ungracious. Sam, he had all the glory that day, and of course Jake got a mention because unfortunately Jake was unable to, and he came along, and
With his stitches in.
Yes, I don't really think he wanted to be there at all. It was-
So
all
there
the
wasn't
secrets
whole
are coming
twin
out
thing
now.
kicking in there because I am interested about the twin bit, because it's kind of, I guess, equal measures, competitive and playmate and someone to
Yes.
train with as well
Quite.
at the same time. And so when you're actually racing, and for you when you were racing, Angela,
Yes.
is it different to another competitor?
No, I think my problem when I was competing against Angela was that I accepted being behind her, and I think that was the mistake. If my coach had said you could beat her, it's all down to temperament or whatever, you can beat her, I may have, but that didn't happen. So I always thought if I was in front of her, I was going too fast. I needed to back off. And I think the best thing I did was to step up to the marathon, because in '88 I was probably ranked 4th over 10,000, and I wasn't going to go to Seoul being 4th. So Harry Wilson, who was coaching me at the time, said, well, there's only one way to go from 10,000, and unfortunately for you, that's the marathon. And I thought, really didn't like the marathon, but it was either have a chance to go or not. And I stepped up to the marathon and came second in the second Brit in the London Marathon, which was the qualifier, and went for the marathon. And from then, I did feel that I was my own person and not having to be compared with Angela. And I was safe there because she has not got the temperament to do anything over 10,000.
Yeah. And do you
So-
think that's why maybe Sam kind of took a step back,
definitely.
stepped inside Brit Bear?
Sam, I would say, personality-wise, you'd probably have said at a younger age was the dominant one, whereas Angela was the dominant one, and he couldn't cope with being the dominant one, but being behind Jake in terms of his athletics. And I kind of think, in a way, he either had to win or he was going to drop out, that kind of stuff. So,
Well, I think there's some learnings from having been an identical twin yourself. So we streamed them separately through school. They were never in the same class together. They had separate friends. And when they did come to running together, Sam very early decided he was going to have a different stomping ground.
Yeah.
That was going to be steeplechase, heptathlon, and he's
Hiking.
kind of kept that up. Yeah, so he's done different events, so the comparison hasn't always been there. And he's run London Marathon in 2:48. Off relatively little training, so he could have been a reasonable runner, but he's just chosen different areas to master. And I think the alternative is you have to accept being the second one home of very competitive twins and having a bad atmosphere at home and things like that.
But it absolutely hasn't stopped him supporting Jake. 'Cause I remember in
Oh,
Eugene,
no.
the whole family was out there, and I think that's one of the lovely things, that now when Jake's racing, the whole family is there supporting. There's no resentment in the other
no,
siblings.
Sam's his number one supporter. I mean, yeah, he
He literally was, because he was Brit Bear for several
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Sam was the mascot of British Athletics. So
Yeah.
you get all these wacky photos of Brit Bear sort of clumping Jake round the head and Jake not being able to reply, but knowing fine well it's his twin inside and he'll get him later.
So
Yeah.
for when you through your pathway through running and having the success you guys did, was there much that you then, with your own kids, that you kind of thought differently of how you wanted that relationship to running to help them develop a healthy relationship for long term?
Yeah, I think we've come from two very, very different pathways into athletics. I mean, mine was very casual. I mean, I grew up in a very, very small rural environment. I mean, I belonged to Hereford AC. I never went to the club once to train because it was inconvenient. All we used to do running-wise, and that was probably when I was in the sixth form, used to run around the roads and used to do started to do track sessions when I went to university, really, or just prior to that at sixth form. And that's the first time I even knew what a fartlek was, or even an interval session. So I was we were in our 20s, early 20s before I even started. So I didn't grow up in having had that athletics club support at all. Whereas Geoff is completely opposite. You actually worked through as a junior
I joined the
into
club
senior.
in my early teens. But if I brought one thing to the party, it was just keep showing up. Don't worry about these prodigies. Don't worry about the kids that have got beards when you've still got a squeaky voice and you're 15.
Yeah, I had that. Yeah,
and don't
that
let
was
it
me.
grow
But I
late.
use Jake so often as an example to my son now, because he's racing. And you're right, especially in the under 15 age group.
Yeah.
You look, and there could be visually 6-7 years between them,
Yeah.
and there's
Or
only
your
ever
father.
2 years. And I keep saying to him, look at Jake, look at these pictures of Jake
Yeah.
at that age, and then he knows what he went on to achieve.
But I could tell him that from experience. So he's not going to know that, and nor are most parents coming through. They think you've got to be hot house. If you're not, junior Wimbledon winner at under 14, you're not going to win the senior thing. No, it's a much more late developing curve.
And it's the point that I raised with Alec when we had my coach Alec on, and he was basically saying the same thing. It's not about being a winner as a child. It's about having somewhere to go when you get into that university, and for going into the senior ranks and still having training that you can add.
Yeah.
And as puberty comes
Yes,
through
somewhere to go.
gradually. And that's the other thing with boys, it's very different to girls through
It is.
puberty, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for those parents who maybe don't know how to manage that, girls, your body shape can change.
Yeah.
Boys, it's a big advantage kicking in early for some or gradually spread out for others,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Completely different aspects you need to look at in teenagers developing. The boys are very small, can be very small at 15, running against 15-year-olds who are like their father, as Geoff always says. And then the girls, unfortunately, the ones that develop early, are actually bigger but are at a disadvantage. So the advantages are opposite in boys than in girls, and it is one of those areas, and it's sad that is the statistic, that you lose more athletes during puberty ages.
Yeah, and it's when those differences kick in, isn't it? I mean, I think boys might lose interest around that 13, 14 just because they're suddenly getting beaten by a long way by kids that have had their growth spurt and their puberty hit sooner. And girls, that dropout rate, it's just really key to keep them in the sport through that 16, 17, 18 years, isn't it?
But that's the thing with athletics. We can be, and I remember doing it when I got in. You can almost get trapped into this looking at rankings and comparison, and actually you shouldn't be. It should be your own journey and relationship with the sport, and not thinking, because
it's your own improvement, isn't it?
Well,
you try and improve yourself all the time.
Exactly, but I mean, if you look back, I always like to look back at someone like, you take a Keely Hodgkinson or someone who is top of the game right now, and look where they were ranked as an under 15, and actually, what's interesting, because you made the point, you actually quite often see athletes, especially middle-distance athletes, with javelins, or shot put, or so all these wacky events that you think, well, hang on, you're an Olympic 800 metres champion. I can't remember if Keely did those events, but certainly some of these top athletes have a range of different events, and they're not one. They're not one under 15, one under 17. I think the only athlete I can think of that had that was possibly Mo. I think Mo Farah possibly was very high, but...
he was high up. Well, you're fairly high up, aren't you?
But I never went on to win an Olympic medal, so I kind of, in a weird way, I kind of did it the wrong way round. But but that's for another time.
No.
But
that club build-up is part of doing all those different events, isn't it? So I think that's for any parents not sure what to do. Sending your child or enrolling them in a club does really help in terms of keeping that camaraderie and that spirit, because that's why so many young kids want to do football, because there's a team ready there, isn't there? And the team spirit is there. Whereas in athletics, you've kind of got to find a team somewhere to do it.
If ever I give a talk, I use you as an example of Bedford and County was your social life as well as your club. You went and did stuff together. You're all kept in the sport right the way through your teens and into your 20s. And for any sort of coach or parent, it's the language is enjoyment. Are they enjoying it? Are they looking forward to going down the club? Don't ask them if they won. Ask them if they enjoyed it, if they broke their personal best, because that's really all you can retrench to. Did you do better than you've done before? And even then, you may have some fallow years where there's growth spurts and other things going on, exams and what have you. But don't, stay in your own lane, basically.
Yeah, sorry, just hanging on to that point. I coach down at Horsham, which is our local athletics club, and so often you see... Not so much the coaches, but the parents, how, or even some of the athletes who are under 15 wanting to know their times, and I'm thinking, I'm not going to tell you your time, because your time won't mean anything to you. And I kind of think, in a way, I think it's improved from years gone by, when everything is there's an emphasis on what time you can do the session in, how far you can jump, how high you can jump, whatever. But I'm a big believer, as I can imagine you all are, that at a certain age, under 17s, they need to be actually experiencing all different types of athletic events. And being a hurdler will help you as a middle distance runner, with agility and all those kind of things. But I think it's very difficult if you have parents of athletes who have been reasonably successful themselves, and they then send or want their children, haven't been successful and want their children to do well in an athletics club, and they pinhole them early on into the events that they think they're good at. I mean, I come across, I had a sprinting group last week, and I said, well, we'll jog a couple of times around the track. She said, no, I can only do one. I'm a sprinter. And I'm thinking, she's 14. Somebody has said to her, you're going to be a sprinter, you're going to be a good sprinter, don't do anything else, because that's what you're going to be good at. And I think that's where I don't know if we're alone in that in Britain, but I think that's where it needs to change a little bit.
Yeah, there needs to be a balance with it, doesn't it? Because you can also maybe go the other way. I mean, I know a young boy in my local athletics club who's doing everything at the moment. So he'll go along and he'll race 80 metres, and he won the regional championships at that. Then he'll go and do the long jump. Then he'll go over to the 1,000 metres and wonder why he hasn't beaten his time.
Right.
And at some point, you have to choose within. You can still keep doing all of those events, but not on the same day, maybe.
No.
And you try and beat your personal best on a different day.
I think you've only got so many years, a window to develop athleticism. Somewhere in the vicinity here, we've got a 400-metre hurdler listening in, our producer. And that, to me, is the ultimate test of athleticism. So as you come through the sport, at any given point, could you run a decent 400-metre hurdles? And if not, why not? Is it lack of coordination, strength, agility, courage? Because whatever it is that you're short on is what will be your deficit for your main event. So if you're lacking speed or strength or coordination, backfill that during your developmental years.
Do you think? I was just thinking, like going back to the parents and athlete or child relationship in the athletics. Would you try and combine it so it's not necessarily parents watching kids? You're actually all doing it together.
Yes. Yeah.
So if like going for a run together, I know my first ever run was with my dad after work, just because he was trying to de-stress, and so it wasn't necessarily about him watching me or me watching him. It's you're doing it together. So did you find that a powerful thing, or did you do that kind of thing as often as you could? You're doing the obstacle course and you're gone together, not just watching them.
No.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we'd be competing as well.
They were trying to win. That's why Geoff said that. Now I make a confession. One of my earliest memories of running with my dad. So I started running with my dad also, and we'd go on summer holidays and we'd be camping. And at that stage, I was going running with the athletics club. So I'd go down with my friends and I'd do it in the evening. I quite liked doing that. But when we were on holiday, Dad always liked to get up early and do it first thing. So he used to be like at my tent door whispering, "Was I awake?" And I'd be pretending to be asleep because I didn't want to go for a run so early. I wanted to do mine later in the day. And then now it's gone full circle, and I'm the one going, "Come on, kids, let's get up and go out and get something done."
You want your athletics to be something that you do together, not that takes you away from other members of the family. So sometimes you've got to be creative on that. So if somebody can't keep up running, come on the bike or come on the e-bike, as it's now becoming in my case. And I think that was the case. Like some of Jake and Sam's earliest holidays would have been the 2003 World Championships in Paris. And that was. They got something out of it, and I think Martha did. I won't tell my John Drummond story, but she was only she was crayoning. She was crayoning, and I was thinking, oh God, this isn't a good holiday for her. She's not getting a lot out of it. She's not taking it all on board. And then and she looks up, and it was the semi-finals, the men's 100, and she goes, "Oh, Chambers has got Drummond's unlucky lane 6." And she was 5, and I'm thinking she is getting quite a bit out of this. But as a participation thing, you can engineer that. Where some cycle, some spectate, some support, some watch. It should be something that doesn't pull you away from your family. It kind of unifies.
Because it feels like as well that it's quite a tricky thing to verbally comment on. I think on a child and because even now I'm conscious of how I say what I say in terms of overpraising or focusing too much on the outcome rather than just the trying to just the never giving up Ashley, just keep going. So even the wording, but then if you're doing it with them, you kind of, it's a different psychology. I feel like you're almost sharing that moment rather than having to comment on what they're doing, because it's always tricky. So when did to fast forward with time, because when the club came into play and then you started coaching Jake a bit more, when did that happen? So
when we moved to Scotland, the children, I taught at the same school that the children were in. Yeah. And
that was where there was also Marcus Cram, right?
Yes.
So you did have an over-competitive parent pushing
we
there.
We did. Although Marcus...
I don't mean that, Crammy.
No, we did. So I used to run the athletics club and I used to do the sessions. So Jake, Sam and Martha would come along, plus all their mates and what have you. And it was a really good squad. And I don't think in a way I would never put any emphasis more on Jake or Sam or whatever. To them it was a group session, and it was all about finishing the session, taking part and doing as well as you could, and there was no more emphasis on other than that. Then Jake and Sam, and Martha joined Edinburgh AC, but they actually didn't train. Well, for the first couple of years they trained. I used to take a group down from Fettes to the track, so they were still under my well, under my control and under, I suppose between us we used to do the sessions. But it was only then, after a couple of years that he joined in, we realised that Jake actually was getting not quite so much as he could by running with his schoolmates, and he needed to actually join in with the Edinburgh AC.
Yeah, I started coaching him. You said, I think he needs a bit more. You better get involved, and he would have been 15. So that would have been summer of 2010 that I started coaching him. So it's been 15 years with Jake.
And was that a learning curve?
Oh, God, yeah. And
Still is.
Yeah, still.
No, because I thought, it must be really hard at times to kind of ride that line of dad and coach. And that's the bit that I'm kind of really interested in, when they're really pushing on and you can see it's hurting. And the coach is like, this needs to happen. And the dad is also just a little bit more paternal in there, and then also switching off from it when you go home. And I think that was something, because Gary was coaching me, and there'd be times when you come home and you have to almost consciously flip a switch. And to be honest, that got easier when we had kids, because then they flip the switch for you when you come in and you leave what happened on the track at the track, and you're able to just be family when you come home. But earlier on, that was a learning curve to come through.
Well, the big role model for father-son is Peter and Seb Coe, and I knew both of them quite well, and they used to call each other something different, whether they were at the track or at home. So it would be coach and athlete, Peter at the track, Dad once he was back home. And I always scoffed a bit at that, as if we're going to call each other. But I think there is something in that. There is a boundary and a door that you come through where you don't really discuss it. We got away with it quite well, but I think probably Jake and I saved up a lot of our tension till more recent years, because I'm a bit dictatorial. When he's young and he doesn't know the sport, he'll take that. As he acquires more experience and runs Olympic finals, wins a world title, his experience is superior to mine, but I'm still trying to be Brian Clough and dictate how it goes. And that's when you get the flashpoints, really. So we made it as far as age 30, which wasn't a bad effort, all things considered. But I think you've got to coach other people. I think that helps. If it's just one-to-one, that's too intense. And you've got to kind of change the conversation agenda when you get indoors. Just forget about it.
And just
I was going to say, did you? I might be being that social media person I saw. Do you use board games as a way of distracting?
Competitive.
You know what? One of my memories is going round to Geoff's and having to play board games. Because we should clarify that Geoff was my manager when I was at uni. And I do remember we had to go around and we had to play charades.
That was one of your first dates with Gary, with hindsight, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't actually a date. You thought it was the whole time.
We misunderstood. But anyway, what happened to him? What became of him? No, we're very competitive. So anybody coming into our family is mortified that Boxing Day or Christmas Day is a quadrathlon of board games, indoor snooker, hide and seek,
because they're not
all
competitive at all.
And you draw your partner out of the hat, and there's groans if you get somebody that's going to let you down. And we still do it. That's summer, isn't it?
Yes, we do.
It's lawn bowls and
because you are competitive people by nature, and but board game is that nice way of you can be competitive without it being a hangover from it, and it's almost like you can be heated and do that passionate bit, and it's fun and it's
as
distractive.
long as you don't smash the whole thing.
We can't do that. It's been bad, Lisa.
Yes.
But I think that's part of when you are a competitive person, you can't really overrule that, because life's competitive as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think finally the one point that I really want to touch on is that epic commentary as Jake is winning that world title, and we have had permission from Catherine to play in her video of your reaction, because it went viral. But how hard was it to keep Dad jumping up and down and turning the other way and spinning around as Susan was? Because I love that Susan's in it as well. I can't look.
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, it wasn't the first time I'd called one of Jake's races, or even one of his medal races.
So there was
Commonwealth Games bronze. Yeah, but he'd won a few. I'd been doing it since his school sports day, because his teacher always used to get me to come in on school sports day and do the commentary. So I'd been doing that for 10 years. The unusual thing was that he won.
We'll cut that out, Jake.
We'd had a chat the previous day, and I said, "Look, you're in good shape. You've had a continuous series of races. You've not been injured for over a year. How many times in your career, a bit ominous now, we've seen what's happened since. How many times are you going to line up when that's going to be the case? So just take a risk. Go with the breaks. don't fear blowing up. Just go with the brakes. And if you can get to the bell in touching distance of the leaders, it's falling into your hands. And that was kind of how it played out. So, but I've also been told, like the first time I did a major championship where Jake was involved was the World Indoors in Birmingham. And somebody, the meeting manager, Chris Cohen, I heard him say to my producer, should Geoff be doing this? His son's in it. And Andy, okay, the producer, was saying, no, it'd be fine. But I was always aware that if I wasn't fine, I wouldn't get to do it again. And I like doing 1500. So I'd probably go overboard in keeping it neutral. The telltale would have been my heart rate. That would have been up at like 180.
That's what I'm talking about. Because
Yeah.
as a commentator, that's hard because you're already managing that to try and keep making sense and keep the words coming out in the right order when you're commentating and you're getting more nervous. But for it to be your son, that adds another degree of
and
nerves
coaching
to
him
that.
as well, and knowing that this could have been his moment. But then there's things that you start concentrating on. The ID, who's that's come through the third. What's the bell time? Because Mo's British record was under threat. So you concentrate on all of that. I mean, afterwards you think, whoa,
Yeah.
it happened. It
And there was
actually
just
happened.
that lovely moment where you say, and that is my son.
Afterwards, did you like that? You must have had a moment to yourself in the corner, or with everyone, that kind of lives forever in your memory. There must be you must go back to that moment and just get chills thinking about it. It must have been.
Yeah.
I mean, Mary's video clip. I did a program on Turkish broadcast at 3 a.m. from a motel in Eugene by prior agreement, and it was to talk about Eilish McColgan's recommendations for improving athletics. And she said, hold on a minute, just before we talk about that, tell me about this clip. And there was Mary's 5 hours later in Turkey viral video clip. And so that's always there. But I remember everything about it. It's not like it was a blur, or because I was of an age, Jake was of an age, we'd waited a long time for it. You imagine it in your mind, and it happened exactly like that.
Yeah.
And you think, wow, I'll never forget that.
Because the other thing as well is like Jacob, who had this aura. He's Olympic champion. He had everything about it. It wasn't like just he not just performed out of his skin, but the race and everything. He beat a world-class field, the Olympic champion, everything, and everything comes to that crescendo. And I just can only those moments just must make everything so. Those highs and lows must make it so worth it. Because the other thing as well that I always think is beautiful in athletics is how many people shared in your emotion in that.
Yeah.
Like how many people, the community of runners just like are so happy for you all, excited because he's British, he's you guys and the relationship and the journey, and it's just, it almost feels like we're part of the extended family in that sense.
Yes. And I'm interested for Sam, because how did he feel that last 150 metres? Did he have any? Because twin instinct, is that real, Susan? Does it
I'm
kick
sure
in?
it is.
So was he calmer than the rest of you in that
he was
last?
with us. I can't even remember where he was.
No, he was. What I remember, there's a video of him. Was he watching back at home?
That's right.
Yeah.
I think I've seen a video of him watching.
And he had to do, because Jake had to fly back from Eugene, Sam got called into Sky Sport and stuff like that to talk about
that's
But
his
presumably
sprint.
he did watch the race live.
yes, he
So
did.
I'm just wondering if he tuned in any way. Was he more chilled? I've got this. I've got
Sam,
it.
it's the old. Sam's gone into drama and theatre and is doing very well. He's living in New York and working very hard for a digital marketing company. So he doesn't have any envy about that could have been me, or he's just very happy for Jake that happened. So I would say number one fan. It's not like he's...
No, I don't mean that. I mean whether he in some way had some twin
vicarious reaction.
twin sense that he was going to win the
line.
race. No, that he was going to win the race. So he knew that he wasn't
Yes.
as nervous as the rest, because the rest of you don't know, and you're all thinking, can Ingebrigtsen come back?
Yeah.
I'm wondering
I'm with you there.
if Sam just had any thought of, don't worry about it, guys, we've got this. We'll have to ask him.
It's the
No,
twin
it is, because I
influence.
can remember when Angela was selected to run for, it would have been Wales in Los Angeles. Sorry, New York. It was the World Cross Country. And I ran Battersea 10K. And I think I won it. And somebody said, oh, gosh, do you know the result? I said, no. I said, but I had this premonition that that she, I can't even remember what she came.
She was 7th or 8th or something.
That she'd come in the top 10 or something like that. And somebody said, well, how do you know that? How do you know that? It's only just been run. And I can't even remember what position it was, but I was very, very close to knowing.
Yeah.
And it was just a feeling that I had. It might have been that I was lucky and I think actually saw myself, when I actually thought about running, it was me that was running, not her. And that's why I kind of felt I knew how well she'd done. Or how
See,
she
that's what I'm talking. We'll have to ask Sam. You'll have to let us know.
Yeah. It was. I mean, you're right about the relatability of it. Underdog, British, unexpected, old man coaching him, and had never won anything.
Yeah.
And then by the following lunchtime, it was Boris Johnson's last ever Prime Minister's question time.
Oh, wow.
So it was live on telly, packed house. What's he going to say? He stands up and he says, "I'd like to congratulate Jake Whiteman."
Oh, wow. Wow. I feel that's quite a nice,
That's a good
almost
point
like
to
a
wrap
line
up
to
then,
stand.
isn't it?
I mean, conscious
Yeah.
time. The only thing I was going to, whether it gets used or not, is like, to all the families out there with kids and stuff and the things you've all done, like if you could sum up what running has done for you guys as a family, to inspire families out there and just to get success or no success, just to how much running can help a family.
Even
and
just managing the kids through exams. A lot
What
of kids
would
at
be
the
your
moment
one thing?
have just wrapped up exams, and I find even just sending kids out for a run when they're revising definitely helped me when I was revising.
Well, I think actually it's very important that one, if you are studying for exams, then it's quite nice to break it up and go for a run or do some kind of exercise. I kind of think in a way it was something that, we all know the Whitemans, not all they do is run, but they're very active and whatever. But in a way, it gelled us together. And I think that any activity, whether it be cycling or playing tennis, or it's an opportunity to get to know each other in a different sense other than, you have to do your homework or whatever. And I think with running, you quickly find that the younger ones, they're the ones that are behind in your run. But as time gets, it happened very quickly with me, that actually they're the ones in front. But they appreciate also that anybody at any age can run, and also they appreciate what success is by watching other people. I mean, they became interested in athletics as a hobby. And I think, in a way, that also takes the attention from themselves. But it means that they've got I think hobbies with children are important because it takes them away from the hard slog of work and whatever they need to do.
Growing up.
Yeah, growing up.
It's difficult.
Yeah, and it's all aspects of it worked for us, and I thought it was a nice chapter in our lives.
I've always thought that running is like a metaphor for life. The more you put in, the more you get out. It is hard. It can be hard, but as long as you enjoy it 51% of the time, you're doing okay.
Yeah. You're the major stakeholder in the company of happiness. Awesome,
Brilliant.
guys.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
So on episode 1, we touched on the breaking 4 attempt and our guesses, if you like, as to whether she would do it or not. And so we do need to wrap up on that one now, and we were messaging each other backwards and forwards.
Yes.
During that 4 minutes 6 seconds.
Yes. Well, it got rounded down, didn't it? Because it's on moving time, not on gun time. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I was very wrong, and it was incredible in terms of to give it a bash and obviously the confidence. I feel like everyone felt like she, as within the team, probably felt like she might have got a little bit closer. But I think that what's to come of it is it just emphasises the bravery to give it a go, the foresight, the ambition, the precociousness, and they are correctly the things to say, you know what, these barriers that we sometimes have in life that have not been done, they're there to be attacked, and it's not always about whether you achieve it, it's about giving it a go. Yeah. And my question, before you say, was, will we see it done by her or anyone in the future anytime soon? Do you think it's possible? Based on 6 seconds is a lot.
I think the biggest underlining point from it all is you will never do something unless you try.
Yes.
And I think part of the reason that she slowed as much as she did over that final, it was 500 metres or so, where she was really starting to lose time on it, was because she risked it all in terms of going for it. And it's only an event like that where you would actually do that, because Faith Kipyegon does not want to get beaten in a 1,500 metre race, in a mile race on the circuit where she's racing against other women. Here, she could really risk it, and you could tell that she was pushing a little bit too hard in the first couple of laps. And so I think that's why it was an all or nothing attempt. So I don't think, to be honest, she was only ever going to get, in my mind, 4:02 maybe if she paced it really, really cleverly. But what she did do was go for it. And what I will say is the only way it's only ever going to get beaten is by somebody really going for it and perhaps holding on a little bit more each time. So she now knows what it feels like to go out that hard. And each time she might be able to hold on a little bit longer.
To quote the great Gareth from The Office, if you remember that great quote, will there ever be a boy born who can swim faster than a shark? Do you think there's an athlete that's running, a female athlete running today, whether it's Faith or someone else that's currently in the scene that's capable? I mean, we may not have to think who it is, but do you think in the next 10, 15 years we'll see a female break four?
I think it's still going to be a tough time because I do think Faith Kipyegon is a phenomenal athlete. And if you think about the breaking two in the marathon, they brought Eliud Kipchoge in, and for the first attempt, from memory, he missed it by 25 seconds.
Which effectively tells you he could have.
Yes,
I know
close.
he did it, but this is slightly more.
Yeah.
I feel like
this one, I think, said, yeah, there's a few more years in this yet. Whereas
Yeah.
I think the 2 hours and 25 seconds kind of did say, you know what, with a few more tweaks and a little bit more of pacing help and everything like that, that is phenomenally possible. Whereas I think now we're still thinking, wow, if Faith Kipyegon still can't do it with all of that around, it is a huge big ask, which we knew because it was hugely an important step when Sir Roger Bannister did it for the first time as a male, and that difference, male and female, I think is more evident over 1500 metres mile than it is over the marathon.
And for the record, I never broke a 4-minute mile. I
Neither
only
did
ran
I.
one. I ran 4:01. I only ran it once, but I ran 4:01. So I'm still hold the record
You know,
against
Gary,
females.
my husband ran 4:00:00.
No, he didn't. Did he?
Yeah. He did later beat it, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
he
Oh,
did.
right.
He
Oh,
is one of those
okay.
people who have run 4 minutes exactly.
Do you know? It's one of those things that at the time I never appreciate. I ran 3:41, which suggests you can run it because they usually go off 43, 44, 3:43, 3:44 for 15 to then suggest. And I do kind of wish I'd gone out there and done it, and just because it's so iconic.
Yeah, you needed
But
a few
yeah.
paces drafted in front of you and around you and behind you.
Yeah, and the modern day shoes and a bit more.
Stop whinging.
What's-
Right,
okay.
to wrap up.
I'm getting old now. I'm allowed to whinge.
the
I'm older
honours
now.
board
Yes.
So moving on to the honours board, which is a great part. So please keep sending in your reasons to be on our honours board for the week. Thank you for getting involved like this and for sharing the stories with us. And first up today is Deirdre, who hadn't been able to run for several months due to illness, but she's just completed her local park run without walking. So well done to her.
Yeah, fantastic, absolutely brilliant. And this is what we want. We want people to let us know what they're doing, whatever those personal achievements are, because it all means something to not just yourself or to someone out there. This is a shout out to. I will read the email quickly because it's a very cool email from John Bateson. So, hey to Paula and Tomo, it was great to meet you both at the after party of the Children with Cancer. Big fan of the podcast, glad you're back, thank you very much. Was hoping you'd give my local running club a shout out. The Teddenham Hall Running Club, Wolverhampton, was set up last year by two friends, Joe and Tom, and have celebrated 1 year. We meet every Wednesday 7 p.m. at the Dog and Gun pub in Tettenham Village. We have two routes, 5k and an 8k, and the club has grown and grown. We regularly have 45 to 70 people turn up each week. It's an extremely friendly club, welcoming all ages, abilities. Come join us for a run and a pint. Keep up the good work, John Bateson. And hopefully on YouTube we can get a bit of a picture of the crew outside the Dog and Gun, where it says coffee, food, ales and craft beers.
Excellent.
Sounds perfect.
You're all on,
I'll have all
on
the above,
honours
please.
board.
I'll have
and
all
I'm
the above.
also just quickly going to add on Amptill versus Cancer. I was at their event, a huge well done, and you're added to the honours board for the amount that you raised in a very good cause. So congratulations to everyone there. Also up, Naomi, who smashed her PB at the London Marathon, clocking 3 hours and 15 minutes. Well done, Naomi.
Fantastic, awesome PB, especially on that day as well, because it was hot. It was a tough day, so well done, congratulations. Carrie has been getting up early to go for a run and beat the heat and managed 5.5 miles the other day. This is very apt at the moment because it is hot and people are probably trying to adjust their time when they are running and getting out the door. And I think
Keep hydrated.
I was going to say keeping hydrated, but well done, because again, Do you know what I mean? At this time, sometimes it's not necessarily about doing what you normally do. If you do have to get up early and you can't do as much, but you do get more bang for your buck. Even if you're running less, you do get a bigger bang for your buck. So, but well done.
It is surprising when you talk. I'm just quickly going to make the point. It is surprising how much you actually need to drink to stay hydrated.
Yes.
And going really basic, the pee test. So long as you're peeing and you're peeing clear or pale coloured, then you are fine and you are still hydrated. So I said this to my son who went off for a race in Orange, and it was like 35 degrees, 37 degrees on the track. And he went, I'm not sure if I've quite been drinking enough because I've not actually peed since I got here. And he'd been there for about 4 hours at that point. So I made him drink a lot, and it did go through in time for him to run well in the race. But he said to me, why was I not? And I said, because you were drinking, and you were drinking, but you weren't drinking enough to cope with the heat and how quickly your body was keeping you cool. And what it actually means is your body is efficient at keeping you cool because it's evaporating all of that and not passing through. But that is a really good basic rule to stay hydrated in the hot weather. So thank you so much for sending in those messages to the Honours Club, and please do keep sending those in. It is, of course, Paula's Run Club at momentumbroadcast.co.uk. On Instagram, we are at Paula's Run Pod. On X, we are at Paula's Run Club. You can send them in on Facebook as well. And the WhatsApp number is +44 756 474 7914. So we do want to hear from you, questions as well as your involvement or your bid to be on the Honours Board for each week. So thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to tuning in next week. Don't forget, we drop on a Monday.
Yeah, blimey, we're 2 in now. Before you know it, we're going to have like 20 episodes, and crikey, it's going to go quick. But yeah, thanks very much, guys, and see you next week.